Welcome to Yin Yoga Lifestyle. I am your host, Colette Darville. Cultivating our body's resilience and inner silence and its application to all aspects of your life. Let's become enlightened and enjoy the power of intuitiveness and creativity. You are listening to Society Bites Radio, social interaction for the mind and soul. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I am your host, Colette Darville, and this is Yin Yoga Lifestyle. So now let us take a deep meditative breath. Inhale, so, and exhale, hum. Dr. Michelle Weiner is double board certified in Interventional Pain Management and Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation at Spine and Wellness Centers of America. She completed her residency and fellowship training at the University of Miami. She is faculty at Florida International University, where she conducts her research on using cannabis as a substitute for opioids in chronic pain patients. She is also faculty and preceptor at Nova Southeastern University College of Medicine and is faculty at Florida Gulf Coast University. Dr. Weiner empowers her patients to heal all aspects of their lives through activation of the mind, body, and spirit. Her philosophy is to promote lifestyle changes through nutrition, movement, natural supplementation, such as botanicals like CBD and cannabis. Dr. Weiner uses a goal-oriented approach to optimize well-being. She is the chair on the Florida's Medical Cannabis Advisory Committee. She practices personalized medicine, focusing on the root cause and offering individualized holistic treatment options. This unique approach of personalized medicine improves quality of life and decreases use of pharmaceuticals while treating conditions such as pain, inflammation, anxiety, insomnia, and neurodegenerative disease. Welcome to Yin Yoga Lifestyle, Dr. Weiner.
Thank you so much for that introduction.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. My first question to you is, did you always want to be a healer, and how did you find yourself in the field of alternative medicine?
Yeah, so I would say that I've always been interested in wellness. I was very athletic from a young age. My major in college was nutritional sciences, and so I always had that more lifestyle holistic approach to treating health. And I had that passion for wanting to get involved in the medical field, but I didn't know exactly what aspect. And so I went to medical school, and I'm a DO, so in osteopathic medical school, we really take that whole person approach. And then I did my master's in public health so that I would get that evidence-based critical thinking, how to evaluate research, and now I'm very involved with research on more of the cannabis and alternative medications. But what happened really was that I saw personally my grandma suffer, and that's because she was in chronic pain, had a lot of joint pain, and she lived alone. And that really affected me, because I thought that pain is more than just physical tissue damage, and there's a whole personal experience behind that. And a lot of times pain is in our consciousness. And so in order to really heal people, we need to understand what their perception of pain is, and really understand their life, and more than just their actual, MRI findings, for example. And so I started to take a more holistic approach to pain management, what we call integrative pain management.
Yeah.
And that's really affected my practice now, because now everything is more goal-oriented, because we're looking at the whole day, the whole person, not just the isolated symptom that they come in complaining of.
Yeah, and in general, I know you're talking about the cannabis and CBD, and now that is really, there's such a misconception around the use of cannabis and CBD, isn't there, at the present time?
Yeah, so it's definitely evolving as we continue to educate, but the stigma really has been perpetuated that you have to smoke this plant, that it makes you high, that it
Yeah.
affects your memory in certain ways. And there's actual evidence. There's a big report from the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, Medicine that came out with the fact that cannabis already has enough evidence to say it helps with pain, it helps with nausea and vomiting from chemo, muscle spasms, like with people with multiple sclerosis. So there's enough evidence already, but the fact that when now in the legal states, for medical legal states, we have all different forms of cannabis. It's no longer just flower. You don't have to smoke it. And we have, an understanding of using different parts of the cannabis plant, not just the THC, which is what gives the stigma, because the THC is really the only intoxicating part of the plant, and there's almost 400 other cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids in that plant. So it's really educating people on the fact that they can have other routes of administration, that they can use CBD to mitigate the intoxicating effects of THC, and that it's personalized, that we can actually personalize a treatment plan that works for that person's what we call endocannabinoid system, which is a whole system in our body based around cannabis.
Now, cannabis has been used for healing purposes for centuries, and I was interested, so I did some research, and it goes back to the Egyptians and the Chinese, the Indians, and the Greeks. So it's been around for a very long time. But is the way it is currently used or consumed today, is that driving the strong opposition to its legalization?
Yeah, so cannabis has been used for thousands of years for all different conditions. And the problem in the United States is that they have classified it as Schedule I drug, which means that there's not enough information to say that it has medical benefit and that it has a high potential for addiction. However, that's really not true. Most of that has to do with the political climate, the financial incentives, and so there's a lot of hype around cannabis, but until it's descheduled, no longer made a Schedule I drug, then there's all these restrictions around it. So now there's 35 states that have legalized it for medical reasons, and each state has its own list of medical reasons that would qualify someone to actually get a medical marijuana card. But again, it's still federally illegal. And the biggest issue with that is if you're getting drug tested and you're positive for THC, you can still lose your job. There's a lot of issues because it's a Schedule I drug, and that's what we're trying to do, is educate people and produce more evidence so that we can deschedule the plant.
Now, I have a quick question here. Does CBD does that rate as a level 1 drug as cannabis does?
So the thing is that you can derive CBD from hemp or from cannabis.
Right.
And so the legal limit in the United States for CBD from hemp is that it has to still have less than 0.3% THC. Now, if you are thinking about an actual pharmaceutical CBD like Epidiolex, that's for infantile seizures. That's a Schedule V, but that's only a CBD drug that has to be indicated for children with Dravet syndrome. And so what's going to happen over time is there'll be more pharmaceuticals that are cannabis-based that are approved, but for a very specific indication, like, nausea and vomiting from chemotherapy. It's not just going to say, well, for chronic pain, use this. It's going to be an evidence-based, research comes out. Maybe you have muscle spasms from multiple sclerosis. And so CBD alone from hemp is legal as long as it has less than 0.3% THC and it's been lab tested. However, if you have one specific indication, then yes, there is one CBD, but that's, again, only for infantile seizures.
And and I know that you're very much a whole body mind person, and the whole mind body spirit connection, it's something that many people use as sort of a description, sort of to visualize emotional and physical balance. And and a lot of people will throw it out, here's the mind body spirit connection, but cannabis can be an enhancement to this balance in our everyday function within our endocannabinoid system, can it not? Because that is the system that a lot of people don't understand that we need, and we need to balance.
Right, and what happened was they discovered that we have these receptors in our body that are activated by the cannabis plants, and when they discovered that in I think it was the early 90s, Raphael Mechoulam in Israel discovered that we have these receptors. They thought, well, there must be naturally occurring cannabinoids in our body that activate these. We don't have these receptors just to smoke the plants, right? So
Right.
when they discovered that we make these naturally occurring cannabinoids, they called it anandamide, which means the bliss molecule. And then we have these receptors that are activated, enzymes that break them down. They realized the main purpose is to keep us in homeostasis, to keep all of our neurotransmitters in balance. And so when you have a specific symptom like anxiety, insomnia, pain, there's some neurotransmitter that may be out of balance there. And by using cannabis, it can help increase the production of your own naturally occurring cannabinoids to prevent chronic disease, but it can also help for symptom management. So the mind-body connection really comes into play with the fact that the cannabinoid receptors are in our central nervous system, in our brain, and also all throughout our body, in our organs, in our muscles. And so when you use this one plant, you're able to, first of all, connect with yourself, which especially during COVID-19, a lot of us are suffering with that, and also help to balance a lot of our other chronic conditions and potentially prevent other things and act as a neuroprotectant and help with healing in general.
Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I kind of am right now. I wanted to ask you, during this COVID time, is there any research that says perhaps CBD might or cannabis can help protect us from the virus?
Very interesting. So the interesting thing about the endocannabinoid system is that it's bidirectional. And what that means is sometimes our immune system needs a boost, and sometimes we need to suppress our immune system, depending if we have something like cancer or an infection. And so the nice thing about enhancing our endocannabinoid system is once we use cannabis, it knows what to do with it. And so we can use something like CBD as a great anti-inflammatory, but in general, we want to keep our lungs, obviously as safe as possible in case we were to get an infection that wouldn't help us. So using CBD would be, a great thing just to keep the immune system and the endocannabinoid system in balance and optimize that. But obviously, vaping and smoking now is definitely not anything that I'm recommending to patients.
Yeah, I agree with that. How do you determine if a patient should use cannabis or CBD? And can you combine the both? Can you combine the two?
Yeah, so CBD is just one of the cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. So it's really, do you need CBD or THC or both? And so usually CBD alone can help with anxiety, inflammation. Those are the two indications that, for the most part, we don't need much THC with. THC can actually make people anxious, right? And so if someone is just suffering from anxiety, we would start with CBD, or just inflammation, we would start with CBD. But really, CBD doesn't activate our cannabinoid receptors. So we always like a little bit of THC with that. And then I always encourage people to use THC because I really do believe that, again, we have this mind-body connection, and I like that patients are able to really connect with themselves. And I think that when you have more severe pain, you're going to need the THC. When you have issues with insomnia, anything where you need to stimulate your central nervous system, appetite, nausea, and vomiting, some of the neurodegenerative diseases, you'll need the THC, but we still use the CBD because what people don't realize is that CBD is one of the only things to mitigate the intoxicating effects of THC. So we use a ratio of the two depending on how sensitive you are to THC to counteract the high, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. How do you see the future of cannabis and CBD in the Western medical system for the future? How do you see that?
Yeah, so I see that more medical schools are starting to teach about the endocannabinoid system. I have residents and students that shadow me in the office, and people are really starting to see it's more of like a bottom up, like the patients are taking this plan, they're telling us about it, and then now we have the medical legal system where we're able to use the cannabis from the dispensaries and treat patients. But I really see that cannabis will play a role in each specialty, every single specialty. It's not going to be its own specialty, but every single specialty can benefit from it. And so I see that the newer doctors are going to become more educated about this. There's going to be more evidence-based research coming out using cannabis for specific indications. And I think it's going to be more of the harm reduction concept, the concept that let's take less opioids, let's